everybody. Thank you for joining us for another CFFS office hours. We're happy you're joining us today, and hopefully this is not your first, but it is. We'll just kind of review some things that we've reviewed at the beginning of each presentation. So we'll start by going through some CFFS updates. Then we'll get to the part of our presentation where we're answering the questions that were pre-submitted to us, and then review some training and resources that are available. I am joined by some other members of the home care team, as well as some of our regional resource specialists. So feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat or Q&A. When possible, if you can reference what slide your question or comment pertains to, that just helps us as we're reviewing the questions and comments and sorting through them to answer at the end of the presentation. We'll try to answer the questions that are asked during the meeting if they're pertaining to the presentation or the slides that we're talking about. If they are new topics, we ask that you submit those questions with the office hours for our next presentation. That way we can make sure that we have the correct answers or do some research if needed prior to answering your question on a new topic. And then just a reminder that we are not holding office hours next week due to the holiday. So there'll be a 2-week break and we'll meet again on a Tuesday in 2 weeks. I don't have that date in front of me, but hopefully that is in the email that you've all received and in the registration link. So if you submitted a question to us and don't see your question today, it may just be that we've combined it with another question or changed the wording. We want the questions asked to kind of pertain to the larger group, so we may have needed to change the wording to fit the presentation. It's possible that we may have already answered the question and it's on our FAQ page, or it's possible that we're still researching and plan to answer it at a future office hours meeting. If you hadn't had an opportunity to review our FAQ page, please do so. We try to publish questions and answers regularly. The link to our FAQ page moved, or I should say, the list of FAQs did move to a new page, but you can find a link on the existing FAQ page if you haven't looked at it in a couple weeks. It's just on our main CFFS webpage, and then there is a link here that says Lead Agency FAQ, so you can click on there. We're still working on organizing them by topic. We are almost done doing that, so we hope to have that up and running soon, so they're a little easier to find. But until then, just continue to use the Control F function to find a topic or a question. We are posting all of the office hours on our DSD training archive site. So you can go ahead, and if you missed a previous meeting or you want to review the information that we talked about, you can either rewatch the video or you can take a look at the presentation slides. And this is just a reminder that our CFFS codes and rates are published. So right now they have their own page. They were also updated, the LTSS rate sheets were also updated a couple weeks ago to include CFFS. You can find the rates and codes there as well. And then if you're not familiar with what the process looks like from start to finish, from when the person receives a MnChoices assessment all the way to where the lead agency is entering or authorizing services, please go ahead and review this link here. It's just an interactive, I guess, video or training where you can click on the different icons and learn about each step of the process. So we've reviewed that a couple times in this meeting, so we'll let you do that on your own. But here is a link to do that if you'd like to review that information. And then just a friendly reminder that if you have a question regarding MnChoices, please connect with your MnChoices mentor for those questions. We want to focus this meeting on CFFS policy, but if we know that there are a lot of MnChoices questions and that the two tie together, so just make sure you're going to your MnChoices mentor if you have MnChoices specific questions. And then these are some resources that we recommend that you review if you haven't yet already, or if you have a question, maybe check out these resources first before emailing us. So you can check out our policy manual, transition page of PCA and CSG to CFFS. Our service agreement calculators are really helpful. Again, our FAQ page, and then our reference guide to MMIS. And then we also have some available training. So we have an e-list announcements about all of our online trainings, a timelines video. So if you're not, or if you have different scenarios of when people can transition to CFFS, this video is really helpful to review. Of course, we have the lead agency and the MMIS trainings and TrainLink, and then a webinar of the transition from CSG to CFFS. Okay, and there was not an e-list that went out today, but we did want to provide you with a couple updates that have occurred since last week. So the first is that we corrected an error and clarified that the county tribal nation cannot edit a PCA transition service agreement for 60 days. And so we reviewed that last week in this meeting, but we wanted to make sure that that error was corrected as well. The second bullet, we clarified some information regarding the AHC2 screen and the ASA3 screen. So you can go ahead and review those on your own. And then we also posted the consultation services plan, or the service delivery plan cover sheet. And I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like. It's a pretty basic cover sheet, but it will be used by the consultation services provider when they have met with the individual and maybe they're aware of an issue with the service delivery plan, or they've had that discussion with the person. Maybe the person is requesting that a non-covered good be written into the plan, or something else that maybe the consultation service provider may feel that that's typically not a covered service. Remember, the consultation services provider cannot approve or deny the plan. And so what we've done is we've created this cover sheet where they can just make you as a lead agency aware of any issues that may be in the service delivery plan. And so pretty straightforward, just the person's name, PMI number, lead agency, the name of the consultation service provider, and then any issue or something that they've needed to talk to the person about and want to make you aware of. So the consultation service provider will not be submitting this cover sheet if there was no issues or anything that they needed to discuss with the person. But if there is something that they needed to discuss with them, they want to make you aware, they'll include this cover sheet with the service delivery plan. Okay. So on to the questions and answers. So we'll start with the some questions that were submitted regarding the assessment process. So first question, is the lead agency still required to complete the CFFS conversion sheet in the MnChoices application for the first 3 months of PCA with a reassessment? The answer is no. The first 3 months of PCA will just come from the CFFS eligibility. And so there's no need to complete the conversion, the CFFS conversion sheet in MnChoices. What are the differences between the 6893R and the 6893P? And who is responsible to complete the documents, and what is the timeline for each? So the 6893P is a service delivery plan. And the plan is developed with the person and the consultation services provider if the person wants their assistance, or to the level that the person needs assistance with. The lead agency is responsible for approving the service delivery plan, or the 6893P. And there's no specific timeline yet of when this needs to occur. We know that during the first year, as individuals are transitioning to CFFS, it may take a little bit longer than future years as someone is just renewing their service delivery plan. So we don't have a specific timeline yet, but we would assume that the lead agency will approve the service delivery plan once that has been submitted to them for approval. And then the 6893R is the CFFS rights and responsibilities form. Okay, and so this is provided at the intake meeting by the consultation services provider, by the CFFS provider agency, the person's chosen, or the FMS provider, if they've chosen the budget model. Okay, so the 6893R was developed to replace the home care bill of rights, if that helps kind of sort that in your head of what the difference are between the two different forms. So we know that last week we presented on who is responsible to provide the 6893R, the rights and responsibilities form. And we received a number of questions. We actually have a couple different slides to review this information. So the lead agency, they can provide this form, but it is not required. It's required by the consultation service provider, the CFFS provider agency, and the FMS provider. So can you please clarify the eligibility information that the lead agency must send within 10 days of the assessment? All right, so within 10 days, the lead agency must send all documents required by MnChoice's policy, and you can review this link for more information. They must provide the CFFS eligibility in writing, and DHS doesn't require a specific form for that. They must provide a list of consultation service providers, and then they must provide the CFFS information sheet. So right now we have it in 5 languages. There should be more to come in the future, but right now it is these 5 that we have translated. Okay, so you may notice from a few weeks ago when we originally presented this slide and the e-list that went out on October 1st, we have removed the bullet that says the rights and responsibilities as a required form by the lead agency. Again, just to review what I said previously, the rights and responsibilities form is provided to the person by the consultation service provider, CFFS provider agency, or the FMS provider. It does not need to be given by the lead agency. Okay, so just to drive that point home, we've got one more question on it. Who must provide the person with the 6893R? So again, consultation services, CFFS provider agency, FMS provider. And we've updated our the rights and responsibilities manual page as well, so you can review that link if you'd like to. Okay, is the lead agency required to mail the MnChoice's supplemental summary charts within 10 days? So no, they're not. That is not part of that 10-day requirement or the list that we just reviewed of what needs to be provided within 10 days. So within 10 days, the lead agency is required to tell the person about their CFFS eligibility, but they're not required to send them MnChoice's supplemental summary chart. The person first needs to meet with their consultation service provider to develop the plan. And then after that time, the lead agency will send the supplemental summary charts if the person selects the agency model. And so the lead agency can send the supplemental summary charts to the person when they're sending them a copy of their approved service delivery plan. What is the start date of the service agreement for someone who is newly assessed to CFFS? So there's a couple different dates. So the line for consultation services will start the date the person selects a consultation services provider. And then the lines for the other CFFS services that are approved, so the personal care or PERS or the goods and services, the other items, that will start the day the lead agency approves the service delivery plan and when the person has selected their provider. So either the provider agency or the FMS provider, depending on if they're doing the agency or budget model. So whichever occurs last. So you just have to make sure that both of those, they have an approved plan and the provider is chosen, and that would be the start date of those CFFS lines. And you can review that information in the MMIS training in TrainLink. So we'll just review this example of somebody who has an initial assessment for somebody that had their assessment occurred after October 1st. So in this example, the lead agency completed the assessment on November 4th. The lead agency will send the CFFS eligibility results to the person by the 18th of November. So that's within 10 business days. Once the person selects the consultation service provider, the lead agency enters the consultation services line with 6 units from the date that they've chosen that consultation services provider to the last day of the month, occurring prior to 12 months after the date of assessment. So for this particular example, since the assessment occurred on 11/1, the line would end on 10/31/25. Okay, so October 31st. Then the lead agency will receive a copy of the service delivery plan and approve that service delivery plan. And then the lead agency will enter the other approved services from the date that the service delivery plan was approved and the date that they've chosen the provider, whichever comes last, okay, through, again, the last day of the month occurring prior to 12 months after the date of assessment. So again, with this example, where the assessment occurred on November 4th, that line will run through October 31st of 2025. Okay, and then just a note that if the person is using worker supervision and training, they'll authorize that full budget amount, $1,272.96. Okay, our next group of questions are about MMIFs. So will the lead agency need to use code X5609 in MMIS to add CFFS services for a person on MSHO or MSC Plus on a DD waiver? So like PCA today, lead agencies are going to use the code X5609 in MMIS for all CFFS services. So that includes consultation services and all the other services that fall under CFFS. How does the county tribal nation enter a service agreement for a person with 0 ADLs and a level 1 behavior into MMIS? So we just wanted everyone to know that we are aware that there is an error in MMIS right now, and we are working on correcting the error and coming up with a resolution. Janine, is there anything that you want to add regarding that, or anything specific to this error that's happening?
So we're actually working on it right now and doing testing. So it should be fixed this week, but it may be beginning of next week, but it should be shortly.
Great, thank you. Do counties or tribal nations enter the TS or U2 modifiers for consultation services in MMIS? So no, they don't. Lead agencies just need to enter the T1023 line, and then the TS and U2 modifiers are used on the claims. So they're not actually entered by the lead agency. The consultation service provider will use those modifiers during billing. And you can review this resource of the MMIS reference guide if you have additional questions or want to see more specifics. So the next group of questions are regarding enrollment. Will PCA agencies enrolling as CFFS provider agencies receive a new NPI number? No, they will not. They'll use the same NPI number. Okay, we'll move on to covered goods and services. So can you provide an example of what it looks like for CFSS to cover assistance with skill development, maintenance, and enhancement? Does this expand the number of individuals who may be able to meet their needs through CFSS only? So the person will only add skill maintenance and enhancement to their service delivery plan if they want to use it. So that's important to know. It is not required for everybody. So an example of that could be the use of a transfer board or the use of a communication device. And skill maintenance and enhancement will not expand the number of individuals receiving CFSS only. So a CFSS worker can reinforce the skills that a person is learning, but they don't replace the other services that are needed. So an example of this may be a person that might receive, say, like speech therapy, that a CFSS worker can reinforce the skill of using a communication device through the skill maintenance and enhancement, but the worker doesn't replace the speech therapy that's needed for the person. So the person would continue to be authorized for speech therapy and for CFSS. Okay, so CFSS continues to be a personal care service and isn't a replacement for, in this example, speech therapy. Okay. Next, we'll talk a little bit about support plans. So if a person has a mid-year change, is the lead agency required to obtain new signatures, both on the service delivery plan and on the MnChoices support plan. So for both of these, the service delivery plan and the MnChoices support plan, it isn't really a yes or no answer. It really depends on the type of revision that's needed. So for the service delivery plan, we at DHS are working on a document that's going to show what types of revisions might occur and what the steps are for each of those different revisions. For example, a signature isn't needed if somebody needs to add more consultation services units to their service agreement or to their plan. But it is needed, a signature would be needed if somebody were going to move funds around within their budget. So if they were going to move funds from personal care over to purchase a good or service, or vice versa, as an example of when a signature would be needed. So as soon as we have that document complete, we'll be sure to share that with everybody. And regarding signatures on a MnChoices support plan, you want to review the signature requirements page of the CBSM. So next questions are regarding service authorizations. Must the lead agency provide the CFFS eligibility information within 10 business days for both an initial assessment and a reassessment? So the answer to that is yes. For both the initial and the reassessment, that needs to be provided within 10 days. Okay, on to home care nursing. So this is a review of a slide that we shared last week, but we did receive a question regarding this third bullet here. So I'll just read through this and then add some additional information. So who adjusts the service agreement when a person also uses home care nursing? Who informs the consultation services provider of the maximum amount of CFSS units when they also have a home care nursing authorization? So this is not different than how PCA is today. So for people not on a waiver and receiving home care nursing, the lead agency is not responsible for adjusting the service agreement. The medical review agent and or DHS will merge the home care nursing and CFSS service agreements. The assessor documents the home care nursing services in the MnChoices assessment. The home care nursing units and CFSS units or budget must fall within the home care nursing cap. And the consultation services providers will not know how many home care nursing units the person is eligible for. If someone's receiving home care nursing, the assessor is just going to note that home care nursing in the MnChoices assessment. So it's really just like any other service that the person is receiving, and that all services need to be noted in the assessment. So this third bullet here, we understand, or I think the comment that came to us was if the person didn't know all their home care nursing, or they still needed to be referred, or that the lead agency may not have all that information. So this third bullet is really if the person is getting home care nursing, that the assessor is going to make a note of that in the MnChoices assessment. Janina, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think we're going to end up, so we work with the SASD team as well as our medical authorization agent, Essentra, to put things in MMIS and to merge things. And so we will look at that basically on a case-by-case basis to see if that impacts the personal care line in CFFS or not. And then we'll have to work with consultation or a lead agency if it needs to change that. Mostly, I think in our recent past, we haven't seen the PCA or the personal care lines change a lot, that nursing has been added up to the nursing cap. And they've kept the personal care lines as they are, but we'll be looking at these on an individual basis as they happen.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so consultation services. Who is monitoring the work of the consultation services provider? So we received some specific questions on if there was fraud or auditing. So please know that consultation services providers are contracted entities of the state and are subject to audit. If you have concerns regarding any CFFS provider, you can email us at our CFFS email address or make a fraud and abuse report. Can an organization be a consultation services provider, FMS provider, CFFS provider agency, and or provide contracted case management to the same person? And how will this be monitored? So like we've talked about before, an organization may provide all these services. They may have a part of their organization where they are a consultation services provider, an FMS provider agency, or they may do contracted case management. We have organizations that do all four, but they cannot provide more than one service to the same person. So if somebody is their consultation services provider, they cannot also be their FMS provider or their provider agency or provide case management. They can only provide one of the services to the same individual. Okay, so providers are required to disclose all their direct or indirect financial interests to the person. So they are required to create a form that they are providing to the person that discloses this information to them. And then the person is signing the form saying that they've chosen them as the provider. And then again, all providers are subject to DHS audit. So we have a couple different resources for you to review if you'd like to do so. Okay, and then the last couple slides are just regarding different scenarios. So can the lead agency authorize a 45-day temporary start or an emergency start for a person who is being discharged from an institution? Will consultation services providers prioritize people who have a 45-day temporary start? So yes, the lead agency can authorize a 45-day temporary start or an emergency start for a person who's being discharged from an institution. And we met with the consultation services providers last week. And one of the topics that we talked about were the 45-day temporary start. And we asked the consultation services providers to prioritize people using that 45-day temporary start. Now, it's important to know that the consultation services provider, they may have more than one person utilizing this, but they are aware that if that scenario occurs, that they should try to prioritize those people. If a person had their initial assessment in September of 2024, but then had an eligibility update in November of 2024, could the lead agency authorize CFSS? So no, the authorization for CFSS is based on the assessment date. So all assessments completed prior to October 1st are still for PCA and CSG, and any assessment that occurs after October 1st are for CFSS. So in this particular example, the question was if they had their initial assessment in September, and because that assessment occurred in September, the person would not be eligible for CFSS. Okay. I'm actually going to pause there to see if there's questions we should review. We just have 2 slides left regarding submitted questions and to talk about our next meeting. So I'll pause there to our home care and RS team who are reviewing the chat. See if there's anything we'd like to talk about. Just bear with us while we're reviewing some of the questions that are being posed. So I apologize for the silence. We're just trying to read through them quickly.
So I think we can answer the question that was about authorizing on slide 19. So if the assessment occurred on 11/4/24, we would typically authorize PCA for 11/4 to 10/31. This new instruction seems to imply that the person cannot access the CFSS units until they qualify or until the date the plan is signed. And it's really the date the plan is signed. So before the plan is approved or signed, you authorize consultation services. You can start that on the day of the assessment, but really the services need to come out of an approved service delivery plan. And so you wouldn't be adding those lines until later. I can also update the service agreement questions about 0 ADLs, level 1 behavior, and the LTs. So continue to route those to the SASD team. As I said, we're working on a fix. And so what we're hoping is that if they're all in the queue for SASD, that when the fix is done, they can just go in and F9 them, and then they will come up with the right home care rating. So for current PCA recipients during the 3-month transition period, should the lead agency be sending the PCA agency a copy of the supplemental summary chart or the PCA assessment? Yes.
Hi, this is Diane, and I saw a couple of questions about home care nursing. And since we covered that today, to clarify that nothing has changed in terms of what happens in today's world for the people that are receiving a combination of services between PCA and home care nursing. And it's the same for CFSS. I mean, you still do your eligibility assessment and to determine CFSS eligibility. And we completely understand, because almost everybody on this call from DHS has done assessments and has experience as well, that people at the time of the assessment don't always share with you all the services they're receiving, but that's okay. You can do what you typically do before you go out and do an assessment and look in the system and see if you can see that the person's receiving any services. That's, what you have control over, but obviously you don't have control over whether or not they share that with you at the assessment. But again, that's not anything new for CFSS and for people that are receiving that combination. So that whole process is pretty much staying the same. So if someone is eligible for that HCN, it's the CFSS outcome is what you do, and then our team merges that here in terms of and makes sure that all the CFSS units fit under that home care nursing cap. But yeah, again, that's not a change, so don't feel like it is. So hopefully that helps a little bit with that question, or a couple of those questions.
I believe there is a question regarding the start date of the service delivery plan and if the plan should include the 3 months, or if the service delivery plan should include the 3 months of that transition time of someone transitioning from PCA and CSG over to CFSS. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Janine and Diane, but that should not. The 3 months is PCA or a CSG, and then CFSS would start 3 months later. And so the plan would be the start date of CFSS and not include the 3 months.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and review submitting questions for next time. So we just ask that you review all the available resources before submitting questions. Submit a question for the office hours using this CFSS office hours pre-submitted questions link. And that, I believe, our RRS team is sending that out to lead agency supervisors. And so hopefully you're receiving a copy of that link in an email. If not, you can go to any of our presentations in the DSD archive page and find that link as a part of our presentation. If you need something answered immediately, you can go ahead and email us at cfss@state.mn.us. We just ask that you don't submit the question in both places because we've got the same team of people answering the questions. And so just submit one or the other. Let's see. Oh, and then this is just a reminder that for lead agencies, you can go ahead and submit policy questions to the above links. And we just want to make sure that those policy questions are coming to us as the CFFS policy team, rather than going to providers or to the Minnesota Service Hub. And then for contracted case managers, we just ask that you contact your county rather than asking providers or the Minnesota Service Hub as well. And then a reminder that if you have a MinChoices question, to go ahead and ask your MinChoices mentor. Okay. And then just a reminder that there's no office hours next week due to the holiday. And so we'll go ahead and meet here in 2 weeks. And I'm just going to look at the chat one more time.
Erin, real quickly, I'm going to clarify what I was talking about for home care nursing services is unrelated to people that are accessing consumer support grant via their home care nursing budget. So I was talking purely about standard CFFS and the combination of standard CFFS and home care nursing services. So the person, yes, previously it was stated that consumer support grant home care nursing is going away, because consumer support grant is going away. And that includes for either people that are eligible for consumer support grant because of their PCA/CFSS outcome, or people that were eligible for consumer support grant because of the home care nursing eligibility. That is still going away. So that is not what I was talking about for those combination in cases. It's just the standard combination of services between CFSS and home care nursing.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah.
On a different topic, we saw a question, so I'll just clarify. Consultation services is required for anybody who's using CFFS. So it doesn't matter if they're using the agency model or the budget model. A person needs to go through a consultation services provider to utilize CFFS. Now, the amount that they'll use their consultation services provider is up to the individual. Some may need full assistance in writing their service delivery plan. Another person may not need any assistance writing their service delivery plan. But regardless, they do have to go through a consultation services provider. And the consultation services provider is responsible for reviewing the service delivery plan. So if a person is able to write one on their own, the consultation services provider still needs to review the plan. And then they're responsible for providing ongoing support throughout the year. Maybe the person has questions, maybe they are struggling with how to be an employer, or maybe they want to make a revision to their service delivery plan. They will need to, the consultation services provider is there to assist them with those things. Again, that is for anybody, regardless if they're on the agency model or the budget model. And then the same is true for worker training and development. The worker training and development line is for both agency and budget model. Under the budget model, the difference is that line is used to pay for the person to send a worker to a class. Okay, where under the agency model, that's paying for the person at the agency to train the workers, or send a person to a class. I guess it can be for both.
Erin, there's a question about the 45-day temp start. And so the 45-day temp or emergency start, similar to PCA, allows a person to start getting services prior to the face-to-face assessment. This has always been a decision at the lead agency level, whether the person, whether you can prioritize and get a face-to-face done in time, or if you do the 45-day over the phone to allow them to go home with services. To be honest, if somebody isn't connected to a PCA agency before or at the point that you're doing the 45-day temporary authorization or emergency start, it won't do them much good to get a 45-day emergency start, because they'll be waiting for an agency and workers. So usually that is taken care of first, and then a 45-day emergency start is assessed and authorized. And then, of course, they would need to have a face-to-face determining them eligible on an ongoing basis, and work with consultation then to utilize CFFS services after that 45 days. And it's just it's an agency model, and it's just very basic to get their cares taken care of until they can have like the full assessment.
Okay, with that, we'll give you about 10 minutes back of your time. Just a reminder again that there is no meeting next week. So our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 19th at 10:30, same time. And thank you again for submitting your questions. The next presentation, I guess we'll have 2 weeks of questions. So feel free again to use this link here, the CFFS office hours pre-submitted questions link, to provide those to us. And we'll see you again on the 19th. Thank you, everybody.